right, it is episode 4 of Scrushy on Business. My name is Dave Green. I am here honored to be with Mr. Richard Scrushy. Richard, how are you this week?
Well, we're doing good, Dave. Real good. And we've had, man, we've had a lot of questions coming in from the last couple of shows. A lot of questions, and we got some good news. We've got two CEOs scheduled in the future that are going to come on. One of the CEOs we have coming on, I have to tell you this, and he's going to really be interesting because he is a serial entrepreneur. He built numerous companies and he's built successful companies, but he's also been in lawsuits and with his partners, and he's had some in and outs and some things that these things will happen, and we're going to talk some about that. I know, as we talk about building companies, setting everything up so that that doesn't happen. But he's a real interesting guy. And then of course we've got an incredible guest coming in from Atlanta, Georgia, who is got one of the biggest marketing companies in America and has, and I don't want to tell him who yet, Dave, but he has one of the largest clients that exist in this country. And matter of fact, it's an international client. So it's one of the largest clients he could possibly have in the world. And he handles the marketing for them. So, and he's been doing it for over 20 years. So that's going to be an incredible guest. And that's all coming in the future. We'll be talking about that. But yeah, I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Doing great. I've had a fantastic week. A lot of things going on in our media companies here in St. Louis and our podcast company, Podcast Heat. So this is a great time of the year where we do a lot in the sports realm. So obviously it's a great time of the year for sports with everything that's getting ready to either finish or get ready to start. But we invite people, always want to remind people, info at Scrushy on Business is the email address, info at scrushionbusiness.com, where you can ask questions. We've had several people write in, and we're looking forward to getting to a lot of those today. Before we do that, though, Richard, let's go back to last week. We told the story of your friend Bill Manovich and Simple Scrub. And I got a lot of feedback on people watching the video and seeing him on Home Shopping Network. And it's not just the fact that he sold 700 of those very quickly on Home Shopping Network. It's the passion he sold it with, the story he told, and what we really talked about last week, the fact that it was something that was needed.
Yep. That's what we've been talking about. There's not every entrepreneur has to have the vision. In other words, a lot of times you come up with concepts where you see a need, but not always. And I'm going to, after we get through some of the questions, I want to talk a little bit about McDonald's. Okay. I want to talk about Ray, who was the entrepreneur that took McDonald's from the McDonald brothers and then built it into the worldwide 36,000 restaurants, in 100 different countries. We'll talk about that because he was not the entrepreneur. He didn't have the vision. But when he went to the restaurant and he saw what they were doing, and that, by the way, that was 14 years after they had first opened that restaurant, which was in 1940, and he goes in 1954, sees what they're doing, falls in love with it, and then of course the story goes on. We can talk about that in a moment, but here we had Bill Manovich. He just goes into his grandma's house. He's just in there watching her, and he's going, oh my gosh, this is horrible. Got to be a better way to do things. But he did. He saw the idea. He then said, I can fix this. I can make a change. And it's not just going to be his grandmother. It's going to be everybody's grandmother. And then of course, it expanded into, oh, wait a minute. We're going to be able to eliminate back injuries in hotels and hospitals by using this particular brush. Wow. And so now he's got, an international product that serves a great purpose, and he's selling it in volume, and he's been very successful. Other people see things like that, and they will say maybe to their wife or to their husband, and they'll say, really, somebody ought to invent something that would do this. You've heard that before, haven't you?
Sure.
And then they just go about and they don't do it. And then 20 years later, they say, whoa, wait a minute. I had that idea 20 years ago. I should have done it. And I have a perfect example. Can I give you, I got a great example.
Please.
Okay. So my wife was traveling a lot when the kids and whatnot back in their early days when they were little. And I had a little boy who was 2 or 3 years old. And she used to take him and put him on he would ride on the suitcase. He got the handle with the wheels. He would ride on the suitcase. And she called me. She says, I'm going back and forth on these planes. I'm dragging these kids all over the place, and they're riding on the suitcase. And she says, I really think I should invent a seat where they could just sit and you could strap them in and you could pull it. I want you to know, last year I was at the airport in Houston, Texas, and a mom comes by and somebody has made that product.
Yes,
okay?
I've seen it.
So you've seen it, but so this was probably, I'm going to say maybe 14 years ago.
Wow.
15 years ago, 16, whatever it was. I said, well, I got to look at my age of my son. Okay. So maybe even 18 years ago when she was telling me that. So, it was 18 years ago. Now that's something, isn't it? But that's what I'm talking about. We see things all the time and we see opportunities and we just go on about it. Now, a real entrepreneurial guy or girl who has that entrepreneurial spirit might say, and if they are looking at the time, they're in a situation where maybe they have access to capital, or maybe they have their own capital, or maybe they're looking for a change in their life. They may lock into that over a period of time. They might not do it immediately, but they may come back to it and say, I want to manufacture that. Okay. We've seen that from so many different people. And it's being at the right place at the right time, seeing the opportunity, seeing the need. And then, of course, you know what has to take place first? Let's run the numbers and see if it will make money. Because if it's not going to make any money, you're certainly not going to be able to afford to do it. So, I mean, that's kind of the way the situation is. You've got to make sure, you got to look at everything. You got to test it. You got to question it. You've got to run the numbers every which way you can run it. And then you got to think about, where am I going with this? And how big is is the customer base really? I mean, is it something that is going to sell a lot in a short period of time? Or, I mean, what kind of funding is it going to take? What kind of margin? What are people willing to pay? You got 100 different questions that you've got to ask.
Forecasting is a word that we're going to talk about a lot on this show, because at some point you have to make educated guesses. And I've found that to be one of the most difficult things to do, because I'm an optimist. So every time I sit down to forecast, usually at the end of it, I look at myself and think, are you crazy? You need to adjust this, or this doesn't look right, or I'm not confident in it. We had a question from someone that had written in that had asked about the types of things that leaders that are entrepreneurs that want to be in business, what are the skills that they need to have in order to be successful? And I would put forecasting ability near the top of that list.
Well, yeah, they've got to be honest with themselves, but they do have to do the due diligence, and that's one of the things. So, are you asking about the skills that they have? You're looking for somebody who certainly they got to. I'm telling you, over a period of time, if you're starting a new business, you got to be made of steel almost to be able to get through all of the traps and all of the ups and the downs and everything that it takes, and especially raising money. Finding the suppliers, hiring all your people, structuring everything. You've got to have a skill set for doing that. You've got to be strong. I mean, the thing is so neat about the entrepreneur is those things don't bother him. Because if you look at the definition, taking the risk of building the company, that's the entrepreneur. He doesn't fear the risk. Now, I mean, that's a huge statement, but that is so true. The real entrepreneur who has that spirit, he's not worried about the risk. And when people come and they say, yeah, but what about this? What about that? He doesn't care about that. He's got his sight, or she's got her sight set on the end result, and they can see it, and they can see the process of getting there. And now there are a lot of people that have ideas and think they're entrepreneurs, but they really aren't. They don't have because I've sat down with them and I've said, well, now, wait a minute, let me ask you a couple of questions. Where do you think this is going to be in 2 years? And they couldn't tell me. If you ask me on a business I'm building, I'll tell you where it's going to be in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, because I'm already seeing that. And that's the spirit of entrepreneurship. You have that. You you even have visions about the customers and, where to go sell and who to talk to and changes you need to make. And, but what we see is that not everybody has that. A lot of people think they do. So you gotta question yourself to make sure that that you have the fortitude, that you've got the knowledge, the ability to really see into the future. Now, the biggest problem that people have is they start out with not enough money. They're just underfunded, and they hit the wall, and then they struggle. And two things are going to happen. Three. Number one, it could go under because you can't get additional funding. Number two, whoever comes in knows that you're in really dire straits, and they're going to take a huge portion of your company away from you when they put the money in. So you're going to take this huge dilution. You're going to lose ownership. Or number three, you're going to find a really good partner that loves you, thinks it's a great idea, and they're going to put the money in, and you're going to pick up steam, and you're going to start, growing it and expanding it again. But yeah, you got to have some toughness into you. You got to be strong. You got to be tough. You got to be willing to, walk through the valleys, and you got to be willing to climb the mountains.
There's no doubt about that. I want to get to a listener question about funding, because I think this is a very good question. This is from Anthony in New Orleans, who wrote in and asked you, Richard, what advice would you give a young entrepreneur with a great idea but limited funding?
That's a great question. Is it truly a great idea? Okay, I would advise them to make sure, because if it's really a great idea, it's got to have all the right components. Okay, number one, if we do this, what kind of returns are we going to be able to have? Are we going to have to, how much money are we going to have to raise? Is it so much money that it's going to be difficult? Or, okay, so you got to look at everything. So we analyze it, we put a model together that will show the returns, that will show the volume. I always like to look at the demographics and say, okay, if it will only sell, or you can only do this in these demographics, how many of those demographics are there in America? And let me go back and tell you, back in the day when I was building Health South, that we did a tremendous amount of demographic studies, and there's this thing called certificate of needs that many of the states had, and most of them had it back in the day when we were building the company. You had to go file for a certificate of need, and it was all driven by the number of beds per 1,000 people. So we did analysis throughout the whole United States, all 3,000 plus counties, to look and see what was the bed need in every single county in America. So when we analyzed that, we had a map, and I had some great people working with me. And in that map, if it reached a certain level, it was red. That means it was red hot. And then it kind of went to yellow, and then it went on downhill. So when it was red, we said, hey, we've got to get there. So we looked at every market in America. There are about 300 plus MSAs, or populations of over 100,000 people, right? So we studied all MSAs, we studied all the counties, and we looked at the bed need, and those were our target markets. So when I went to Wall Street and I'm raising money, and they asked me, how many of these markets can you put one of these in? I was able to say X number. And they said, well, how do you know that? And he said, because of the bed need. Because we know that, basic bed need is you can put 20 beds per every 100,000, and they've got X number 100. And I'm making these numbers up, but because they vary. But, I was able to say to the investors on Wall Street, this is exactly how many markets exist. And if we can just get 10% or 20% of these markets per year, or 5%, or whatever number I gave them, you build your model, financial model. And they say, okay, so you're saying you're going to go from 100 million to 500 million in this period of time. Tell me how you get there. And I could mathematically give them the exact way that I was going to get there. Now, if you're an investor and you're sitting back and you're saying, this guy's on it. He number one, he knows how he's going to get there. He knows how big his market is. And then they would say, well, how much money is it going to take? How much money have you got to have? And I'd say, well, we can borrow against this, and we can borrow this much money, and we've got this much cash. And so, and the cash flow off of these are going to generate this. And so this is where we are financially. So we know that we can build this number and we can grow the company and scale it based on this information. So, and then what's happened over a period of time is we begin to find other things in healthcare that we could do: surgery centers, imaging centers, sports medicine, occupational medicine. You see what I'm saying? And so we begin to build models for those. And we then looked at the demographics for all of that. So then we were able to go from, $100 million company, believe it or not, for after a few years, to $1 billion company, to a 2 billion, to a 3 billion, to a 4 billion, because we planned, we executed, we were able to raise the capital, and we were able to take the company public. But we had a plan, and we did all the due diligence associated with it, and we went through all the calculations. So that's a lot of information for a guy that asks a simple question, right? But what I'm trying to get to him is put it together, do your demographics, figure out your cost, figure out how much money you got to raise. Now, and if you do a super job on that, and you say, well, I don't have very much money, I don't have very little funding. Okay, but look, if everything is really good, then you will be able to get the funding. Because look, there are investors and people out there right now all over the country with plenty of money that are looking for ways that they can look. They don't want to get 2% at the bank on 100 grand or 200 grand or $1 million, 3%. If you're able to show them they can get 20, 30, 40%, or maybe even 100% on their money. And let me tell you, the venture capitalists back in the day when I was young and, and full of vinegar, and I was out there making it happen, here's what they would tell me: I want 5 to 6 times my money in 5 to 6 years. And I had to fit that mold. So if they put in $1 million, they wanted to get $5 to $6 million out within 5 to 6 years. That's still not a bad concept. And let me tell you, most entrepreneurs would take that money all day, every day. But the guys now, they've gotten a lot smarter. Believe me, they were smart back then, but they've even gotten smarter, because now they want to know, okay, so how many of these are you going to build, and where are you going to put them all, and explain to me, how you're going to roll it out and how you're going to scale it and all that. So you've got to be able to put all that together, and that's not hard to do. And you don't have to go get a master's degree in business or a PhD to be able to make those kind of presentations. So anyways, I'm just saying to that young man that asked that question, you may not have the funding today, but if you've got a great idea and your dream and your vision is on target with the right things, you can raise the money.
Send it into info@scrushionbusiness.com. Richard will take a look at it and let you know some ideas. This day and age, with the technology that's out there, Richard, it is also easier to get your ideas out there to people who are looking for opportunities, because they're signing up at different services where entrepreneurs can put their products out there. So it shouldn't be as difficult to get that word out there. But as you said right when we started, when I read Anthony's question, which is it a great idea? Because if it is a great idea, you will find the money. If you do your due diligence in terms of the homework to go find where those people are, get it out in front of enough of them, somebody's going to bite.
Yeah, and and then I always like to go back to the simple things. That is, when you are going to an investor and you've got this great idea and you've figured all of the things out that I've just talked about, make sure that you wear your best suit, okay? That you speak clearly, that you present well, that if you've got a PowerPoint presentation, you need to run that by many, many people to find out, what if you got misspelled words in it? What if you don't have proper grammar, or it's incomplete sentence, or you got to fix all of that. So when you go in to talk to that investor, you got to have your best shoes on. You got to look sharp. You got to present well. You got to make sure that you can answer all the questions. That's why I used to love to make my presentation in front of a lot of people, several people, before I'd ever make it. Say, ask me questions. What do you see wrong? What are you thinking about when I present this to you? What did you not like about it? How did it flow? And those kind of things, you work all that out before you ever get in there. So, let me tell you, you usually have just one shot. I read that book years ago. What is it? The first 7 seconds or first 8 seconds or something like that. They're going to make a decision about whether they like you They don't even know it's a subconscious thing. They'll make that decision so quick. I'm telling you, it's just like that. They'll not like you for the whole time you're talking to them if you don't make it happen in the first few seconds when you go in there. I mean, it's just life. That's just the way it is. People are funny, and especially people that have a lot of money but don't have a lot of time. Now, Dave, that's what you're up against. So you know what that means? Stop. Not a lot of BSing. Not a lot of rambling like I'm doing on this show. You don't want to do that. You want to get in there and you want to hit them with the points. And when you get through, you want to say, you have any questions? And make sure you answer every one of them.
That's it. Yeah. You have to be prepared. You have to know your pitch as well as anyone in the world, because you're the one who came up with it. So the expectation is that you're able to deliver it to those types of people in that room. But yeah, if you get that opportunity at bat, you have to be very, very well prepared. You mentioned scaling, and you mentioned scaling Health South. Aaron in Chicago wrote in about people who scale companies. Is there a common mistake that you see in companies that either try and grow too big too quickly, or maybe don't try and grow quickly enough?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's a pretty common problem, and it usually is the biggest problem is they don't have the funding. They don't have enough money to scale it to the extent that they're trying to scale it. They don't have the people to do it. And then what happens is they add I've seen this a lot, especially in the retail area. They'll add a whole bunch of new stores and they don't have enough management to run them. So the customer service goes to heck in a handbasket and margins begin to be reduced and they get a bad eye, certain markets, bad name. They get a bad name. They're not, people will start talking ugly about them. And now what's so bad about that is the internet is so cruel. I mean, somebody puts it on Facebook and then 20 people share it. And now you got 10,000, 50,000 people that now say, hey, I'm not going to go eat there, or I'm not going to buy that, and that happens so quick. My daughter came in the other day and she was telling me a story about a company. Okay. And it was a negative thing. And I said, that's just not true. She said, well, I read it on the internet. I said, I know, but I said, I know that company and that's not true. There may have been a bad instance somewhere, but that company is not what you're showing. I'll never go there again. I said, well, wait a minute. You're talking about maybe one off here, because I know that this company's not like that. And we have that happen all the time. So now we've got to, just even be a little bit better. But the problem with scaling is if you don't have enough money, you don't have the management. You remember, you've always heard the thing, management, location. All of these things are very, very important in building any kind of business, especially in the retail area where you got to have multiple locations. So those things, putting it in the right place. Now, this happens. I know one of the other questions asked about, I saw the other question they asked, what could, I forget what the question was, but it had to do with, what could go wrong or how bad could it be? Well, what kind of risk do you take? I think it had something to, do you see that question there that came in?
Yeah. Jordan in Los Angeles, how do you balance taking risks with protecting the long-term stability of your company?
There you go. Because you never, ever put it all out there to where you'd lose it. So if you're going to take a risk, let's say you got a $10 million company. You don't take a $10 million risk. You might take a $2 million risk, but you don't want to take such a big risk that you will lose it all. You'll lose it all. I talked to a gentleman here recently, right? And he's a great guy. He's an entrepreneur, a very smart guy, has been successful all his life. And he had a deal come along and he put the majority of his ownership of what he had, cash, into that deal, and it went sour. And he's having trouble now paying his rent because it took him down. Now, he shouldn't have done that. He should have put up 20%. So you've really got to take a look at, let's just say it does go wrong. Is it going to destroy my business? Is it going to take me down? Am I going to be able to get out of it? What can I do? those are the kind of things that you really do have to measure. You get, first of all, anything you're buying or anything you're building, any city you go to, do your due diligence, do it thoroughly before you start investing money. Number two, limit your risk. Make sure that the risk is not going to take the whole company down. If you had to close it, shut it down, and just lose the money you invested in it, can your company still survive? That's the question you got to ask. And that's not so much, not a big deal when you're a 100, 200, $300 million company, unless you're doing $100 million deals that could take you down. All right. I know a $1 billion company that went down. Okay. Actually, it was about a $2 billion company, and they did $1,250,000,000 transaction. They bought another bunch of business from another company. They didn't have the skill set, the leadership, and the management to run that business. It went south. They ended up filing bankruptcy and selling off all the assets. And the company went, it was too big. A $2 billion company took $1,250,000,000 risk, and it brought them to their knees. So you got to think about what you're doing, and how much debt you're taking on, and what is the real cash flow coming out of it. But they thought they could run it, but the problem was, Dave, they couldn't run it. They didn't have the management team to take on. They took on like 300 locations overnight. They never got their arms around it, and it took them down. Those are things, and that was a big deal. So for young entrepreneurs that are looking at taking on 100,000 or 50,000, you guys, it's the same concept. It's just different scale.
Yeah, I saw it happen in the media business. It's obviously happened to a lot of legacy radio companies, but the one I worked for in particular took over the CBS radio properties, and CBS was not a small operation, and they were not prepared for the transition, and it really hurt them for many years to dig out of that of trying to catch up to where they needed to be. It can, as you said, it can throw off everything because there was that trickle down effect of everything that happened because of what they did. Here's a good question from Melissa in Denver. This is about your career and making tough decisions. Well, that'll be something that comes up all the time. When you're at the top of these companies, you have to make difficult decisions almost every day. Melissa asked, what's the single most difficult decision you had to make as CEO, and how'd you work your way through it?
I don't know if there was one. I know there were several. There were a lot of period of the years.
Tied
And
for first.
early on, I want to tell you, this is something, when we talk about the way things have to be, sometimes I'm just going to have to tell the truth and tell you I made a mistake. Okay. And I was able to overcome it. When I started the big company that I built into a multi-billion-dollar company, the first one, I hired several people that I thought, and, were going to, do the work and carry the load and make it happen. And I liked them. I mean, I like these people, and I put a lot of faith into them, but I had to let a couple of them go because they were not performing, and that was hard. And let me just say this, Dave, I didn't let them go soon enough. Okay, so I burned up some cash. I let them make some mistakes. They cost the company some money, a significant amount. And had I gotten rid of them sooner, we would have saved the company money. So and that was my fault. But they were recommended to me by people that I knew, had no idea that these people, and let me, it's really funny too, because the people are jealous. I mean, there I was as the CEO of the company, had put all of my own money in, was paying all the salaries and everything. And then I raised the venture capital. And I had one of these guys who I was paying started attacking me on all my decisions. And I was like, what the heck? I mean, I'm over here killing myself. I'm putting the money up. You're not putting the money in. I'm paying the bills, and you're going to attack me. And I had the vision. And it was long term. He didn't work out. Okay. And then I had another person that I brought on, a lady that didn't work out as well. And I really liked her as well. And I actually liked the other guy, but he just didn't make the cut. So You will have some difficult things early on like that, but I had some tough decisions. I I walked away from some acquisitions that I wanted to make. I had $11 billion acquisition. Okay, that I had a board member that talked me out of doing. If I had done that today, that company would have been a $50 billion company because of the size of that company. I didn't buy that. I should have done it, and I let that one board member convince me that I shouldn't do the deal. And of course, he was wrong. I mean, he was bad wrong. Had I done that deal, we'd be running a $50 billion company today. That was a mistake. Taking the company public, uh, that was a lot of work. That was a very difficult thing to do, to say, okay, now we're going to take the company public. And, but that was one of the greatest things I ever did. I learned a lot, but yes, it was a hard thing to do, but we did it. Uh, and it's always going to be hard for anybody, because you have to go out now and you have to convince the public market and all of the big investment funds on Wall Street to put money into your business. A lot of people don't understand what that's all about. We got to do a whole show on that one day, okay? Because when you walk into a investor conference and you've got the Fidelities of the world sitting there, and the JP Morgans, and you got all of the big funds and the Putnams, and everybody's there, right? They're going to beat the you know what out of you when you're a CEO. They totally disrespect the CEO, and a lot of the CEOs can't handle it. And a lot of the CEOs that quit and get out of running public businesses is because they can't stand Wall Street. And I hate to say this too, but most of the analysts on Wall Street are young. And I mean, very young, like in their late 20s, early 30s. And so these guys go in that are 60 years old, 55, 65-year-old, building their company, and they got a 27-year-old just beating the heck out of them, asking them 100 questions and telling them everything that's wrong with their company. And it's just a very difficult thing. But there's a lot of tough milestones that you have to get over, and a lot of things in building a business. And all of us are going to have different experiences. But let me tell you, at the end of the day, I loved it. I would do it again. And I wouldn't take, any of that away. I've enjoyed every minute of it. Building a company, it's one of the most exciting things that you could ever do. And I recommend that if you are truly an entrepreneur out there, you got a great idea. Let's put it all together in a way that you can take it out, sell it, get your money, get the investors in, and go build your dream.
How do you, as a CEO of a company that size, decide I'm going to take and put the time and effort that it takes to become a public company? Now's the right time to do that. Did you have to pretty much stop the progress at that point, or were you able to do the what you needed to do to have the company become public and advance the business at the same time?
This is probably one of the most important things that I could say on this podcast. When you start your company, when I'm talking day one, you need to build it as if you're going to take it public. Day one, because so many people, they set up these partnerships and they set up these different structures. And then when they realize they've got a successful business that they could potentially take public, they got to undo all of that. If they set it up as a C corporation from the beginning, they put together the right board, quality board of directors, people that are credible and have a great background. And they get an outside accounting firm that is a reputable accounting firm. And they go get, I'm going to tell you this, I would hire an SEC, a lawyer that has SEC experience. He doesn't have to be an SEC lawyer, but he's a security lawyer. He's a guy, when you go and you get a law firm, don't get a litigator. Don't hire somebody that does bankruptcy. Don't hire somebody that, does life insurance policies or, mortgages on homes or foreclosures. Go hire you a guy or a girl who has SEC experience, security experience, that can put together offering documents, that if you took your company public, they could do the public offering. They know how to put a red herring together. They understand that. Now, why? Because that would be one of the greatest counselors that you could have. So everything you do in terms of acquisitions and raising money will be properly done, proper records, everything. Because see, when you're building a company, you're layering on things like this, month to month, year to year. So you reach a point you can take it public. Well, all of that history is going to be now disclosed into a red herring, and then annually proxies and 10Ks and 10Qs and all of that. So what you have to do is know from day one that everything that takes place, all your investors, all your partners, all the people you hire, they're going to put in the salaries, they're going to put how much stock they got, they're going to put in every transaction you do is going to end up in that red herring. So if you start with a good lawyer who's got SEC or securities experience, they will help you put it together right, just like this, so that if you do get to a point that you're profitable enough and you have the trajectory that would interest Wall Street, and they say, well, we love this because these guys have, they built like this, and we can see how they're going to keep building like this. Well, that at that point, you take it public and they can see that it's going to keep going. They're going to want to own that. They're going to want to own that stock because they want to participate in that growth after the public offering. So if you structured it all right, then when you do, when that red herring or that offering document hits the public, it doesn't have a bunch of negative stuff in it. It's got positive stuff in it, and because when Wall Street gets it and they read it, they see that's got all this negative stuff in it, they'll go, well, I'm not going to invest in that. I don't want any part of that. But if it's all good, smooth sailing, they're going to want to be part of it. So I really believe that starting from the beginning, do it right. Build it as if you're going to build it into $1 billion company, and say, you may never make it to $1 billion, you may never make it to 10 million, but if you build it right, you'll be glad you did.
Yeah, be well prepared. That's great insight from Richard Scrushy, which you can get each week right here on Scrushy on Business. Of course, you can visit the website, scrushyonbusiness.com. Follow us on social media. If you're seeing us on YouTube, we hope you will like this video and subscribe to the page. Hit that bell so you get the reminders when new content is available. But you can also reach out, info@scrushyonbusiness.com, and you can ask Richard questions. We've got time for one more. I want to get to Derek in Kansas City's question here. Richard, he asks you, what's your approach to hiring people for leadership positions? And what do you prioritize? Is it experience, potential, or cultural fit?
Probably all three of those.
But I figured you would say that.
Yeah, but look, you got to not, if they don't have the experience, have they got the potential? Do they have the ability to get there? And what is it going to take to get them there? And I've hired people in the healthcare jobs that never worked in healthcare. So they didn't necessarily have experience in healthcare, but they had experience in management, or they had experience in, enough that I felt like I could transition them into, whatever the job that I had to put them in. Because here's the sad thing. You're never going to find the perfect employees. I'm just telling you, they're all going to have something that makes them not perfect for you. And so you got to say, well, can I get over that? How can I fix that? Can I train them on that? Can we get them to be able to do this? Can we live with that problem they got? Now, I will tell you this, that I've had to bring people in and coaching and counsel them on what they were wearing, the way they acted in meetings, things they would say, and that I would say, don't ever say that again in front of any of our clients. We don't do that. And I mean, I believe it. And that's part of leadership. And you want your people to be successful. You don't want to hire somebody and you put your name on them. I hired them, I liked them, and then they fail. So what you try to do is coach and counsel them to where they do the right thing. Now, some people just are not going to do the right thing. I mean, they're just not going to do it no matter what. And those people are not going to make the cut. And you just don't keep them too long because they're costing you money. And a lot of those people will end up causing you a lot of problems. But if you talk to them and you tell them, this is what we need to accomplish, and this is what I need you to do, and if you can do this, we're going to be really successful, and you're going to be successful. Let me give you one. And people that know me, and there may be some people that watch this podcast that had this conversation with me. But, when you're managing a business and you got 50,000 employees and you see some of your employees, you see an employee doing something that's destroying his family, and you know his wife, and you know his 3 kids, okay? And you're on the road with the guy, and you think he's drinking too much, or you think he's running around on his spouse or something. I've actually brought him in and said, "Look, you know, I don't know what you're thinking, but those are 3 beautiful children you got,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to change because you're going to destroy your marriage, and it's going to cost you here because when you go through all of that, it's going to be really difficult." Now,
Yeah.
this is a very personal thing, but now I'm saying this because as a CEO, I cared enough, and I know that I saved some marriages. I promise you, Dave, I did because I would say, and they would say, "You know what, Richard, you're right. Thank you for telling me." And I've had some people I've had to say, "I've been on the road with you, and you got to get off you're just drinking too much. You're hungover in the morning. I'm not getting my production out of you. And if you do that when you're on the road with me, what are you like when I'm not with you?"
Exactly.
You know? So there are things that as you build a company and you're the CEO and you took other people's money and they put investment in, and you have a responsibility to achieve certain levels of profitability quarter to quarter to quarter, you're going to want to make sure that you're getting 100% out of all of your employees. So there's a lot of things that has to take place that you have got to take care of. I don't know how I got on that, but I did. I think about these things. I want to work with people that are productive every day. I want them to be out front, like we talked earlier, pulling the wagon, making it happen. Let's go out and do it now. And that one last thing I want to say on that: if you want people to really commit to you, and I mentioned on one of the shows that we did analysis, and we found we had like 70 million, 70, not 70, 70 millionaires that we had generated in our company.
Right.
Over a period of 15 years, 10 or whatever it was. But they millionaires because they had bought stock or they've been given stock options. I didn't know what their personal situation was. All I knew was I could look at what they had, and. But if you give people a chance to participate from an equity standpoint, once you determine that they can do the job and they've connected to the vision, that's one of the greatest things, Dave, you could do is give them a chance to be an owner and to be part of it. And those people typically will stay with you for a long time because I had people stay with me for 20 years and they were solid and they worked hard and they, because of the equity they had, they felt like it was their company too. And it made a difference in the way that they managed people because they wanted good outcomes. They wanted success. They wanted profitability. They wanted to get good returns. These are things that you as a CEO, now, and when I got personal just there for a minute and talking about people where I had to, as a CEO, you're going to have situations where you're going to have to get personal. Don't think all of you can just step away from all of that because you're going to see it and you're going to know you got a problem and you got to deal with it. Because let me tell you something. You want that person that is in a senior position with you or even a mid-level management to be productive as they can be because you're paying them. So you want to make sure that you're getting them to do the work that's got to be done. And you don't want them to embarrass you or to cause problems. And when somebody's really hungover and they're not feeling real well, they're probably not going to do a good job for you. So I'm just bringing that up. Something to think about. Okay.
As you said, it's things CEOs have to think about because you're going to be. I one time had a situation where an employee was going through a very very difficult time with mental health, but had told the company and myself as his direct boss multiple times that he was okay, and every time it just continued to get worse. And it was eventually a phone call with human resources while he was in a hospital bed because you just couldn't count on the person anymore to do their job, and it started affecting the rest of the rest of the company and the rest of the staff. So there are very difficult conversations that you have to have oftentimes when you're leading people, and I can only imagine when it's 50,000 of them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it just happens, uh, just happens. But we do what we can do when we're in leadership roles and try to help people. Visit families in the hospital. You'll see their kids struggling. You'll see the kids are, they might be selling Girl Scout cookies, or they might be in a play, and you try to support them in those kind of things. You try to help the families that help you and the people that are loyal to you. And we always try to do that and be good to our people and make sure that those people who really did dig in and help build the company had some equity in the company, so they got to reap the benefits of the success. And I think that's really key early on too. And when you're starting up a company, you may need a few people around you that have a little equity in it, because when it gets the bumps in the road, things get hard and things get tough, and you may have a bump in your health where you can't go to work for a while, and you might have two or three people there that have ownership that'll go pull the wagon for you. So those are things you got to think about. You want to make sure that you do build a team around you that's supportive, that can get the vision and will help you build what you're trying to achieve. And you hope that they get, like I say, get the vision, have some entrepreneurial spirit about them as well.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate all the questions this week. Keep them coming. Info@scrushyonbusiness.com. Info@scrushyonbusiness.com. You can find out more at the website scrushyonbusiness.com. Feel free to send in your questions directly for Richard about your own business situation or things you might want to know about his career. You can do it again. Info@scrushyonbusiness.com. Richard, it was another great week. Fun talking with you and talking business as always. I'll give you the final word.
Yeah. Hey, just remember this. Okay. We've got some really good guests coming on. I've got two CEOs that we've already got committed right now, and we're talking to others. But we're going to be doing some fun things going forward. And it's just like Dave said, info@scrushyonbusiness.com. Y'all send me questions. I love it. I mean, there's a lot we can talk about. But if you don't want me to talk about it on the show, just say I don't want you to talk about it on the show. But what do you think? And if we'll answer your questions. We'll tell you if we can help you. If we have some thoughts, I have gotten a few emails, by the way, Dave. People want me to give them some money, but the show is not about me funding your dream. That's just to say that right now. That's not what we're here doing. But we wanted to help you to go get your dream funded by telling you things that you need to know to be able to be successful when you go out and you get your company funded. So we're not trying to hand out money here. That's not what we're doing. And I've had a few people ask me for that. And I'll just tell you now that I wish you the best. I do everything I can to give you any advice and whatnot, because that's what we're all about here. And we really appreciate your interest. Thank you for your subscription, and thank you for viewing our show. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
We will do it right here on Scrushy on Business.